Imagine this.
It's the summer of 2005. Google, still just a young internet giant, quietly spends $50 million to acquire a tiny startup with only 22 employees. That startup was called Android Incorporated. And leading it was a man Apple once laughed at, a robotics-obsessed engineer named Andy Rubin. At Apple, his colleagues jokingly called him Android because of his obsession with machines and robots. But what started as a nickname turned into the most powerful mobile operating system on Earth. Today, over 3 billion devices run on Android. It holds 85% of the global smartphone market. And it has made Google more than $100 billion in revenue. Not bad for a company people once ignored. But back then, things weren't so certain. Andy Rubin wasn't like most engineers. At Apple in the late 80s, most of his colleagues were improving chips, making computers faster, or polishing operating systems. Andy, on the other hand, was dreaming about robots that could learn, evolve, and take commands on their own. That strange obsession gave him a nickname. And eventually, it gave the world a name.
Android.
At Apple, Rubin also got a front-row seat to Steve Jobs' philosophy. Jobs believed perfection meant control. Control over the chips, the software, the hardware, the very button you pressed. That mindset created beautiful, world-changing products. But Rubin saw the trade-off. Apple's world was locked down. Only Apple could decide what you could or couldn't do with your device.
For someone like Andy Rubin, who loved experimenting and breaking rules, Apple felt like a cage.
So he left, and began chasing wild ideas that most people thought were impossible. In the 90s, he joined General Magic, a company run by ex-Apple employees that dreamed of creating a handheld device combining communication, computing, and mobility.
In other words, a smartphone before smartphone existed.
But the world wasn't ready. The internet was too slow. Touch screens were clunky. Batteries barely lasted a few hours. The vision was decades ahead of its time.
General Magic failed.
But Rubin learned a critical lesson. In tech, timing is everything. Next, he moved to web TV, where he worked on bringing the internet to televisions. This time, the idea was a success. Microsoft eventually bought web TV for $425 million. Now Rubin had money, experience, and confidence. So in 1999, he founded Danger Incorporated. Their signature product was the Sidekick, a funky little phone with a sliding keyboard, internet access, and messaging. It quickly became a cultural icon. Celebrities carried it. Rappers mentioned it in their lyrics. For the first time, a phone wasn't just about calls and texts. It was about being social. But Rubin's frustration grew. Carriers and manufacturers had too much control. They dictated which apps could exist, how updates rolled out, and who could innovate.
To Rubin, the mobile world felt broken.
And he wanted to fix it.
The solution? Not just another phone.
Not just another device, but an open platform. A mobile operating system that anyone could use for free. A system where developers could build without restrictions. And manufacturers could experiment without barriers. In 2003, Rubin founded Android Incorporated. It was a bold, almost crazy idea, to give away the most important software on a phone for free. Every big manufacturer turned him down. Samsung said no. Motorola ignored him. HTC thought he was insane. By 2005, Android was nearly bankrupt. Just 22 employees.
Almost no cash left.
That's when Google showed up. Google saw something others didn't. They realized if Apple controlled the future of smartphones, it could control the future of the internet itself. And if Apple controlled the internet, Google's empire was at risk. So in July 2005, Google bought Android Incorporated for $50 million. That's when the war began. 2 years later, Steve Jobs walked on stage at Macworld 2007. He held up the iPhone and declared, "Today, Apple reinvents the phone."
The world gasped.
Sleek.
Touchscreen.
Revolutionary. Rubin watched in horror. His Android system had been built for phones with physical keyboards, like BlackBerry. The iPhone instantly made his design outdated. But instead of giving up, Rubin hit reset. He threw away 2 years of work and started from scratch. For 18 months, the Android team worked non-stop.
16 hour days.
7 days a week. Rubin practically lived at the office. And in October 2008, the first Android phone launched, the HTC Dream. It wasn't as pretty as the iPhone, but it had something Apple didn't. Freedom. Developers could build anything. Manufacturers could customize it. Users could tweak it. Steve Jobs was furious. He called Rubin and accused him of theft. "You stole our idea," Jobs shouted. Rubin calmly replied that Android existed long before the iPhone. But Jobs didn't care. He vowed to destroy Android with thermonuclear war. But here's the thing. Wars aren't won with words. They're won with numbers. And by 2010, Android was activating more new devices every day than Apple. By 2011, Android had passed the iPhone in global sales. And the underdog had officially beaten the giant. Today, over 3 billion devices run Android. From $100 budget phones to $1,000 flagships. From students to CEOs. From New York to Nairobi. Android democratized mobile technology and gave billions of people access to the internet. All because one engineer, once mocked as Android, refused to stop dreaming. And that's how Andy Rubin changed the world.